people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that interesting things are happening. Interesting conversations between 160 and 168 pounds per post from International Boxing News. Franchon Cruz versus Marshall.
Savannah Marshall.
Franchon Cruz has made it very clear that she wants to defend her undisputed super middleweight titles against Savannah Marshall. Cruz Dezern is rumored to defend against former junior middleweight champion, current reigning light heavyweight and heavyweight champion Hannah Gabriels on a date to be announced. Hannah is going to be moving down in weight for that fight. Hannah, who sat out all of last year.
It doesn't look like Savannah's going to run it back with Clarissa Shields for more reasons than one, because Clarissa wants the fight in America, but neither Clarissa or Savannah have a U.S. broadcast partner, and Ben Shalom was very recently quoted as saying that he wants Savannah to have 2 fights before she faces Shields for a second time.
That in tandem with speculation, widespread rumors that Savannah Marshall is among 600 other individuals banned from entering into the United States due to their tenuous association with the now defunct MTK Global and Daniel Kinahan. In a nutshell, for better or worse, Shields versus Marshall 2 ain't next, but we might end up seeing this in the interim.
And I like it.
I like the fight, both fights. Franchon Cruz versus Hannah Gabriels, and the winner of that fight, whoever it might be, potentially taking on Savannah Marshall afterwards. Those are both decent-sized fights, 2 of the best fights you can hope to stage anywhere at or around those weights. When it comes to Franchon Cruz versus Hannah Gabriels, I've made it crystal clear that while Hannah is a lot more experienced as a professional than Franchon is, Franchon has the amateur background that Hannah doesn't have, and Franchon is some years younger than Hannah, certainly more active. At least Franchon fought once last year, whereas Hannah, she didn't fight at all, and she's not getting any younger. So you have to give the edge in that fight to Franchon Cruz.
You kind of have to.
They are both scrappers. They are both brawlers, mid-range to inside fighters that let the fists fly, and the fight between them promises to be an all-action shootout. Put simply, somebody might hit the deck. Somebody might get knocked out.
Also of some significance is where that fight is set to take place, since it's rumored to go down but hasn't officially been announced. We don't know what platform is going to air the fight. Is it going to be DAZN, where Franchon Cruz last fought, or is it going to be on Sky Sports and Boxer?
The answer to that question will tell us the viability of a Savannah Marshall fight beyond that fight, provided that Franchon wins it.
If Franchon's next fight ends up being on DAZN, well, there might be some obstacles, some hurdles.
Perhaps, though even with that, I could still see Franchon Cruz migrating from Matchroom over to Sky for such a fight, because that's essentially what happened with Alicia Baumgartner. She had to cross over from DAZN over to Sky for the Mayor fight, so I don't think Matchroom would get in Franchon's way if Sky Sports offered her something.
It's not that big a deal, not that big an issue. If Franchon's next fight ends up being promoted by Boxer on Sky, you can definitely interpret that as a segue to a Marshall fight.
That would undoubtedly herald a potential Franchon Cruz versus Savannah Marshall fight, because why else would Boxer pay to bring her over? Irrespective of where Franchon Cruz's next fight takes place, we also have to wonder, who will Savannah Marshall be facing in her very next fight? Because it's not going to be Clarissa, and it's not going to be Franchon, at least not yet.
She could end up fighting former unified super middleweight champion of Sweden, Aline Cederroos. Aline would serve as a common opponent between Savannah and Franchon. She might end up fighting Aline. She might end up fighting Christina Hammer.
Both Savannah and Aline are on the rebound. Aline lost her last fight to Franchon Cruz, and Savannah lost her last fight to Clarissa Shields. A battle of redemption, battle of the former champions.
And that makes a lot of sense, as does a Christina Hammer fight. Christina, who's been flying largely under the radar since she fought Clarissa Shields here stateside in their undisputed middleweight title fight. She's had 1 or 2 fights since then,
but nothing that grabbed anyone's attention. Christina Hammer is just as viable an option as Aline Cederroos, because neither of those former champions have a whole whole lot going on right now. Any one of them would serve as a viable opponent for Savannah Marshall in the interim of what could be a Franchon Cruz fight.
Either one will do.
Marshall versus Cruz Dezern as a fight is a fascinating fight because Franchon Cruz, for the most part, she's a brawler. She's more brawler than boxer, and she packs a monster looping right hand. Given Savannah Marshall's height, the fact that she's such a big target.
I think punch for punch, Savannah Marshall is a bigger puncher than Franchon Cruz.
Franchon can punch. She's got power. She can do some damage.
Crowding the pocket, throwing punches in bunches, hunkering down and unleashing that looping right. Savannah being as tall as she is, and Franchon having the lower center of gravity of the two.
Savannah's got to mind her neck, move that head, angle off, and don't be in line for that looping right because there's a lot on it. A ways to go before we get there. Franchon's got to beat Hannah Gabriels, and Savannah Marshall's got to rebound off the loss to Clarissa. We're maybe 2 fights out from such a fight.
But I like it. And it is for all the marbles at 168 pounds.
Let's see if they don't make this happen.
Yeah, it was a shit situation, really shit situation because I've been out of the ring for more than half a year and that is terrible because right now I'm in that killer mindset and I tell that to everybody, give me fights now, don't wait because I'm going to give you entertainment, I'm going to give you knockouts. I don't like it, but I moved up, obviously I'm now silver champ at WBC, so my fight has to be ordered, it has to be negotiated, blah, 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 all the boring stuff. So I went through all of the boring stuff, and I think me and Riyad Murphy guy are going to fight for the title because Rivas is out of boxing. He retired.
A few corrections need to be made to Alen Babic's candor in reference to potentially challenging for the bridgerweight title. For starters, where he thinks he's going to fight Riyad Murphy, Lukas Rozanski of Poland was already the WBC's mandatory challenger for Oscar Rivas.
Lukas is already in position, so in all likelihood it will be Lukas Rozanski that Alen has to fight for that title.
One would think. When it comes to Oscar Rivas, the inaugural bridgerweight champion who has not fought since procuring that title opposite the ring, Canada's own Ryan Rozanski, Oscar's not retired. He may be out of commission for the time being, and he may very well end up being labeled a champion in recess, but he hasn't retired. He dispelled those rumors himself by way of his Instagram account with a lengthy post that states in a nutshell, he hasn't walked away from the sport. He's not retired. He is injured.
Here's the skinny. Earlier last year, the news was that Oscar would be defending the WBC's inaugural bridgerweight title against Poland's own Lukas Rozanski. And that went on for a while, those reports, but the fight itself, it never materialized for one reason or another.
The next thing you know, late last year, news breaks that Oscar Rivas would be returning to action this month, but not as a bridgerweight, not as a defending bridgerweight champion, but as a heavyweight contender opposite the ring, Efe Ajagba.
That was the story until Oscar Rivas pulled out injured.
So here's what we know. Lukas Rozanski of Poland is the mandatory challenger to the WBC's bridgerweight title, whether Oscar Rivas is in possession of it or he's not. And Oscar Rivas, he's been bridgerweight champion for a little over a year's time, but he hasn't fought since procuring that title.
So it's possible he'll be labeled a champion in recess.
According to Ring Polska and the boxing scribes over there in Poland, Lukas Rozanski, 14-0 with 13 KOs, and Alen Babic, 11-0 with 10 KOs, have been appointed by the WBC's federation to fight for the newly vacated title in the bridgerweight category.
We'll see if that news checks out. If it does,
Alen needs to get acquainted with Poland's own Lukas Rozanski. Lukas Rozanski, who, much like Oscar Rivas, who you're supposed to be fighting, he hasn't seen action in well over a year. He hasn't seen action since 2021.
I've long maintained that the success and overall survival of the WBC's experimental bridgerweight division is contingent upon being able to make fights that get eyes on them and keep the money flowing.
Since its inception, that hasn't happened yet. The bridgerweight division really hasn't taken off. It hasn't gotten off the ground since the inaugural bridgerweight title fight between Oscar Rivas and Ryan Rozanski.
And it's not going to until something changes. The other alphabet organizations, the other sanctioning bodies, they don't recognize it. They don't have a bridgerweight division of their own. This division is exclusive to the WBC, and it'll never get off the ground if fights don't happen. Moreover, if people don't watch them.
Getting eyes on this division, eyes on this weight class is pivotal, is critical to its survival. Things you need to know about Lukas Rozanski.
You could argue that his quality of competition is actually a little better than Alen Babic's. You may be familiar with the name of Izwagbe Ugono.
It's a guy that was supposed to take the heavyweight division by storm a couple of years ago. Had a great fight with Dominic Brazil, but gassed out and got taken out. It just so happens that Lukas Rozanski, he gave him his second professional loss, stopping him in the 4th round of their fight. He also stopped world title challenger, his countryman, Artur Spilka, in 1 round. This is a guy...
His quality of competition is not dissimilar from Alen Babic's. You could argue that it's even a little better, given who he's fought. And at minimum, what that tells me is he punches as hard, if not a little harder, than Alen Babic does. And Alen can punch.
The area of opportunity here for Alen Babic, the silver lining, as it were, is that in spite of this guy's punch, this guy hasn't fought in a long time. His last fight was in May of 2021, well over a year ago. In 2021, Alen Babic fought 4 times. Last year,
he fought Balski last year, and that was his only fight. That's the only fight he had last year, but that's one more fight than Lukas Rozanski had.
Lukas Rozanski has a lot more ring rust to shake off than Alen Babic has, and that may be an advantage the night of the fight, because it just so happens that Alen Babic is a rather physical fighter.
A guy who hasn't fought in well over a year ain't got a hankering for a fast-paced physical fight. They need to get a few rounds in the bank to get a sweat going. Alen doesn't really give you that chance. He comes right at you from the opening bell.
That's what's working for Alen. What's working against Alen is that exact same thing, that the way this guy goes about fighting a fight, he throws punches and bunches, swings for the fences, goes for the gusto. He does that, but he does leave himself open to be countered, and he has hit the deck more than once.
He was hurt in his last fight. He had a close call with Balski.
This really is Alen Babic's best bet to see himself crowned a champion of any kind, because the talent pool is a lot deeper at both cruiserweight and heavyweight. And I don't think in the upper echelon, I don't think in the upper tier, Alen Babic has what it takes to become a champion at those weights. But at bridgerweight, where the talent pool is a little thinner and the fighters are a lot less active, he may have a legitimate shot at winning the WBC bridgerweight title. This is his best bet.
And this may be the year that happens.
It's a unique opportunity for Alen Babic, because this division really isn't as deep as the others. He himself has amassed a bit of a cult following fight by fight for the fan-friendly style he exhibits, albeit somewhat detrimental to his longevity. He's a fun guy to watch, and he could see himself become...
He plays his cards right. He may see himself become this division's next bridgerweight champion and bring to it the attention that Oscar Rivas didn't.
And finally, an update to a story we talked about in my previous videos. Ryan Garcia on a hypothetical showdown against Regis Prograis. He's too slow. I'd catch him. Night-night.
I hardly expect Ryan Garcia, the pugilist, Ryan Garcia, the fighter, to disparage himself when, hypothetically at least, matching himself against another boxer, another fighter. I hardly expect him to do this, though at the same time...
If you're not going to fight this guy, and I don't think he is, there's no sense in throwing his name around.
There isn't.
Ryan Garcia is not the only guy who accused Regis Prograis of being a bit slow, too slow. Teofimo Lopez says something similar right before his fight with Sandor Martin, when he stunk out the joint.
Yeah, he said the same thing, that Regis Prograis appears too slow.
Teofimo Lopez and Ryan Garcia got a few things in common. You know, they're both young guys, and they're both explosive. They're sudden punchers, ambush fighters almost.
They both are, Ryan Garcia and Teofimo Lopez. They have some speed, some hand speed, and they're pretty good counterpunchers too, the both of them. But then again, so is Regis Prograis, and what I think is going on here...
What they interpret as Regis Prograis being a bit on the slow side could be Regis Prograis' poise and patience.
It's a trademark of his to look relaxed out there.
Because he does oftentimes look very relaxed out there, and they may be misinterpreting that poise as him not being all that fast to the punch. I don't think either Ryan Garcia or Teofimo Lopez can take a clean one on the chin from this guy. And I think throughout the course of a round, he's actually a busier puncher than the both of those guys. Those two guys are waiting to hit you with a single shot to get you hurt.
Whereas Regis Prograis is a lot more productive than they are with his lead hand, his jab hand, him being a southpaw, that's his right hand.
We'll say Ryan Garcia has more generous physical dimensions for 140 pounds than Teofimo Lopez does. Teofimo is no longer a big guy. You know, he's a big guy for a lightweight, not so big at super lightweight, whereas Ryan, he's a lot taller, a lot longer, more of a frame to fill out at 140 pounds, though he has yet to really test the waters in the men's super lightweight division.
He's in love with his speed. Maybe he is a little quicker to the draw than Regis Prograis, but he's not proven at the same level that Regis Prograis is.
Offensively, Ryan has some tools, but defensively, he needs some work. And we saw that in the Luke Campbell fight. And Luke Campbell is not as big a puncher as Regis Prograis, and he's no speedster either.
You might be telling yourself that Luke Campbell fight was a couple of years ago, at least two.
But before you go trying to convince yourself and others that reference is outdated, need I remind you that Ryan Garcia hasn't done a heck of a lot since the Luke Campbell fight. By how much has he actually stepped up in class? By how much has he actually stepped up in competition? From Luke Campbell to who? Emmanuel Tago?
Javier Fortuna?
Beating them is supposed to convince me that he can beat Regis Prograis.
No way.
Those eggs need more bacon. I think a better litmus test would be sharing the ring with a puncher. A puncher, perhaps not on the same scale as a Regis Prograis, but a puncher of some kind, as Ryan Garcia hasn't faced very many punchers, if any, so far. If Gervonta Davis is successful this weekend, he's intended to move straight into a fight with Ryan Garcia, who very recently called off his tune-up fight with Mercito Gesta.
They're supposed to be fighting sometime in April.
If they do fight, that's a very big fight, and we've often talked about that, but that fight would also serve as a good litmus test for how Ryan would fare with an even bigger puncher, an even bigger guy in a Regis Prograis, depending on how Ryan handles himself. Some people like his chances, some people don't.
But if he can win, and win good,
that would in effect improve his chances against another southpaw, another counterpuncher, a bigger one in a Regis Prograis, because there are some slight similarities between Gervonta Davis and Regis Prograis.
You know, because they both pack a big punch and they're both southpaws that also double as counterpunchers. I do think Regis is a lot more prolific with his lead hand than Gervonta is, and I think he throws more punches in a round than Gervonta does, though all the same.
Would reflect well on Ryan Garcia and his chances opposite the ring of Regis Prograis if he can handle a Gervonta Davis, though there's still no telling as to whether or not that fight is going to materialize. I will say, if it doesn't, there's no reason Ryan Garcia shouldn't look to fight Regis and back up all his talk.
You're campaigning at 140 pounds now.
And you're the one saying this guy's too slow. You're the one saying you'll put him to sleep. Show us! Better than you can tell us.
He's not with Heyman and he's not with Arum.
No network politics, no promo politics. So have at him, cowboy.